Derek.
Great. Hi, I'm Derek Gunderson, and on behalf of the Northwestern Center on Law, Business, and Economics, I want to welcome everyone here to our talent analytics, workforce science, people analytics virtual meetup. It's a long title. But at this point, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for coming, and I want to turn it over to Deborah Weiss, Director of the Workforce Science Project. Deborah?
Thank you, Derek. And thanks to our moderator, Richard Rosnow, who's VP of People Analytics Strategy at One Model. He's been providing a wonderful service to the people analytics community with his listings of people analytics jobs, which I'm going to put in the chat. And these webinars offer an opportunity for a deeper dive into how organizations are shaping the roles and opportunities of people analytics. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard now and let him introduce our exciting guest. Richard?
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Northwestern, for putting these on. This is it's been a tremendous run. We're having a ton of fun with these. I am incredibly excited today to welcome Linda Nguyen Bergen to the call. I had the pleasure of working with Linda actually previously when I was at Nike and just thought the world of her. And so when I saw that she moved over to Fortive and things were happening in that space and she had this role pop up, I was like, we have to get Linda on the call here because I know you just have a tremendous career. You have a lot to share. And I'm just delighted for the attendees that are on the call, as well as those listening to the recording, that you get a moment to kind of hear about Linda's career and her path too. So Linda, welcome to the call.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard and Deborah, for having me. It's great to spend time with you and looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. So one of the things that's been super helpful on these calls is just sort of hearing people's journey in their words a little bit. And because sometimes like on LinkedIn, we just see kind of like the bullets, the resumes, and it's like, it's nice to get kind of a human face to kind of how did some of those transitions happen? And so it would be great if we could hear a little bit about your career path and how it led to your current position at Fortive.
Yeah, it's I took a windy road. I don't know if I was just talking to someone and saying that I don't know if I ever thought I would go into HR and tech, but I started my schooling in accounting. I switched to strategy. That's probably kind of the basis of how I'm good with numbers and analytics. But my roles have been all in the past. What's a common theme about it is that it's been cross-functional roles. All my roles have been looking across a department, across an area. So I had work in risk management, health and safety, retail operation, HR operations, and it gave me really good insight to connecting the dots, connecting some of the trends, what's happening across the company, across the department. And so I recently had moved to Fortive, but in the past I had set up analytics team and shared services and HR technologies at Walmart, at BlackBerry recently. So Richard and I worked together at Nike and it was a great time there. And so a lot of multiple things kind of came together. And I would say that I enjoy technology. I've always enjoyed technology. I've always enjoyed tinkering and playing with numbers and systems. And what I love about operations is that I get to execute. I get to see it through. It's not just in theory. I get to see it come to life. And so I'm this mixture of tech, of ops, of the people side. I fell in love with the people analytics and the people side because really I fundamentally believe that what makes a company different is its people, it's talent. It's people that come up with ideas. It's people that innovate. And so I just fell in love with this area for that.
That's fantastic. I really like the note you had about cross-functional. And it's funny because it is rare to see somebody that's had a lot of cross-functional roles, but that's truly what business is. Like business isn't a functional thing. You're not a siloed thing. And it's really that idea of like systems. And I think that's something that I really admire from your career is your ability to work within the HR system across that HR ops space, because HR ops really has to be systems minded as well as HR tech and people analytics as they go horizontally across. So I really appreciate you talking about that because it's a skill that gets underplayed. And
yeah, it's so interesting. And where did you really see that as part of schooling? And it's not a specific course, right? And so it's interesting, but once you get into a company that really it's so cross-functional, you're meeting with various people, you're constantly meeting with finance, sales, other areas, and it's all connected. And so how do we teach this connection and teach how you connect others and work with others as well?
Absolutely. So I'd love to hear a little about Fortive too. Could you tell us a little bit about what Fortive's up to and then what distinguishes it from other companies in its space?
Yeah. So most people unlike Nike, most people probably don't know what Fortive is, but I can guarantee that you interact with Fortive on a daily basis. If you got a Starbucks this week, you interacted with Fortive. We manage all their real estate and our software. If you went into a Walmart where I used to work, also our software helps manages their real estate. And so Fortive is 18,000 employees, 18 companies within Fortive. We're in really 3 different areas of business. One is in healthcare. So examples like taking doctors' notes. So doctors completing their notes, healthcare systems, sanitizing if you've been in a hospital, if you've had a baby or your wife or whoever has had a baby, they likely have interacted with a healthcare product that Fortive has been involved with. Another segment that we're in is called precision technology. So very precise instruments. These types of instruments would help with creating iPhones. They would also work with things for NASA. So we create products that goes out into space. And we have one of our operating companies that does that. Our third area is called intelligent operating system. That's a lot around software with hardware. So when I mentioned around the software that manages Starbucks real estate, that's part of our iOS, intelligent operating system. So 3 distinct segment areas, but also related. And that's Fortive in overall is really that how do we find synergies between companies and apply what we call a Fortive business system, which is really based on Lean Six Sigma, Toyota, constantly continuous improvement. And so these companies are working together, synergies, giving ideas and how we improve. And so there's constant ways that we bring companies to, or we call them operating companies, and improve on our ideas. And so it's a very unique company and very interesting, very great products that it creates. And like I said, on a daily basis, I can guarantee that people are interacting with our products.
That's fascinating. I feel like companies that have a B2C brand tend to have a easier time when it comes to employer brand. How do you feel about that with kind of like how Fortive is kind of trying to shape itself in the recruiting market, or how you kind of talk about that? I just interested to hear your thoughts on it, because it's a fascinating thing to move to that kind of B2B space.
It is. And so when I first came here, of course, when I came from Nike, or literally the most recognizable brand in the world, and then to a company, I used to actually drive by one of our companies. Tektronix used to be down the street from Nike, and I had never known what Fortive is. And so I think part of this is our employee proposition is you can work on great products. If you're a software engineer, you can work on things for NASA, and then later you can work on stuff for healthcare, and you can then later work on stuff that helps with, a computer or an iPhone. And so how great is it that you can use your skill and go into multiple industries? And we really support that. We really believe that we can develop our employees, and that is our unique proposition, that you can apply these learnings and we can grow you. And there's a huge development. I think our last statistics was our management is 68% internal fill. Our presence are constantly filled with our internals. And so we have this mixture of also, like, we have startup companies. We have some companies are 1-2 years old. And then we have a company like Fluke Tektronix that are 50 years old. And so you're learning as a startup also some of these like long-term companies that they've really sustained the market. They've sustained competitors. And so again, it's very great learnings even from a CEO or some of these companies that we acquire or get to learn from, that they are interested in these other bigger companies. And then of course our bigger companies are like, and some of them being traditional in manufacturing, that's also moving to software, and they're learning these new ways of working, being more agile. What is a startup? What does investment startup look like? And so again, it's such a great mix of knowledge. So I think that's more of our proposition, is really how can we help grow you and what you can bring to us. And we really believe in this flourishing, this career that you will have with us. And again, and in 50 countries. And so how incredible that you can work in 50 countries with us as well.
That's fantastic. And it's the just having that variety within the same company, instead of, hey, this is your vertical, this is the thing you do. It's, hey, we've got a lot of things we do, but we do them well and we do them the Fortive way. I love hearing about that.
Yeah,
So
it's
as you think about,
very interesting.
oh, sorry.
I was just
As you
gonna
think
say, it's very
about
interesting.
your team that you built there, and thinking about kind of the team that you're building currently too, could you talk a little about the structures there and what it is you're looking to stand up?
Yeah. So a little bit about my role and then kind of how it fits into the overall team. So I lead our HR technologies, so our HRIS system and more technologies that we'll bring on as well. I lead our shared services. We call them our operations, and we're really building out our operations. We currently don't have a shared services, but we are building out a team. And then my third arm, sorry, I have 4 arms. My third arm is our payroll operations. I lead our payroll operations. So everything that pays our employees 18,000, making sure that the pay runs smoothly. And then the fourth arm is our analytics arm, our people insights arm on it. In regards of the makeup of it, there's that force structure on it. Our team has been changing. I've been here for the last year, and it's really been looking at, well, what new capabilities do we need to bring in? So shared services is new. Analytics overall is new in regards of, in the past, we've had different operating companies really building it out. And I would say, flipping backwards a little bit, is Fortive has, in the last few years, has really focused on building our foundation, putting in an HRIS system. We use Oracle. And so that's been our focus in ensuring that we have one source of truth. And that bringing 18 companies into one source of truth has been a major lift from the team. And a great achievement to do that. And now we're ready to actually use that, build off of our foundation, get mature, get to more insights on it. And so the teams work really closely together because as you know, Richard, that, data from the HRIS system, of course, impacts the analytics side, security
Absolutely.
of it impacts it. And so it's really, I think it's such an amazing team because I have this cross-functional team that works together, sees value in working together, and complements each other as well, and I'm really trying to create this open environment that they can work together on.
It seems like a perfect fit with your systems background, systems methodology to kind of look across and be able to kind of stitch that together. It's fascinating what you said about the kind of some of the operating companies were touching on analytics on their own, or some of them were trying down this path, because that's a unique challenge that you have too, which is a really exciting one as well, to be able to kind of look across this variety of companies and say, okay, let's do this together now. Instead of each of you trying to do it on your own, let's get some scale. Is that part of the kind of investment?
It is, yeah.
Bring it all into one.
It is. It's part of really trying to scale, like you said. And I've had decentralized team before. I've had centralized teams before. I really believe both can work. And I'm still today open in regards of what will work at Fortive, because it really is, how do we govern this? How do we set this up? And how do we minimize waste? So if we can leverage and understand and see across, so we can remove duplication of it. And because no one wants to do wasted work, I'm a believer of that. And so I really, with these other operating companies, and is that, well, what are you working on? What am I working on? What can we do better together? And what is unique to your company that you have to do on your own? And that's okay. That is completely, and I think this is part of a different approach in regards of, it's okay to be unique. And where are you unique? Let's make sure that you have the tools, the ability to do that. But where are we the same? And we recently just launched employee turnover metrics, how to dive into that. And looking at employee turnover, there are some basic things that every company looks at, and that isn't unique yet. Once we start, there is some uniqueness as we dive into getting to root cause, to some of the roles that we actually need to understand some of the business part. And that's where we bring in our business segments and really understand more of the data. And we need that help. It's a joint, as you know, it's a joint, it only tells so much. And so we need more context for it. And so that context, I think, is really important from these other companies. So I'm really trying to remove duplication and putting more governance around this to help with that.
That's a really smart perspective to have, that sort of like both is the answer. Because it is tempting to have a very strong opinion about centralized or decentralized. And there's a lot of, love my consulting friends, there's a lot of consultants that will come in and say, you have to do this one, this is the way. And the reality is, like, work is messy and business is messy, and there's really good reasons to do both. And so yeah, that's a really cool puzzle you have ahead of you too.
Yeah, and it's challenging. It's challenging to do both. It's challenging to do one way or the other as well. Like you said, it's always messy. And so I think that one of the key is making sure that we have good frameworks of ways of working, visibility. I think where I've seen it kind of catch us is that all of a sudden we have shadow organizations that we had no idea what was happening. Then we see duplication, more politics, bureaucracy, all these other stuff. But if we really need to work together and have good ground understanding of who's doing what, who's on point first, I believe that there's just so much work. Like at every organization, I think everyone's constantly talking about, can I get more resources? Can I get more resources? And so there's more than enough work that we can give around.
Absolutely. No, that's a good. Well, let's talk about more resources though. So you've got a new role posted. Could
I
you
do.
talk a little about the role you've got up there, and then
Yeah.
how that plugs in?
Yeah, so this new role, so it's a new role to the Fortive organization. It's our data governance and analytics role. It would be a reporting to me, and that role, I would say, is a few key things is that they're responsible for. One is I started with the title of data governance on it to make sure that we have strong foundation and clean data. Of course, compliant data, but this is really important because when we don't have good, clean data and there's multiple failure points, people immediately start to question it. And so it dominoes effects to all the other areas. And so how do we ensure and sustain that data? So that's part of that role. The other part I would say is around building the organization, the maturity of this. And so I mentioned that we were starting at our report or putting our foundation in place, having one source of data. We have some reports. How do we get to insights? And I think, working closely with you and in this space, it's a maturity, like it's a journey to get there. And so I'm looking for this role to build out this roadmap, build out this journey for us, also manage expectations, because some of it we have to get to insights now. And what is it? Which insights do we have to get to immediately now? And which one will be in a year's time or in 2 years, while we focus on some of our still foundational core, I would say is the second piece on it. Third, this role is they are responsible for the technical infrastructure for it. So our data warehouse, how do we stitch data together? What tools do we use? So on the back end, what tools do we use? On the front end, so for our employees, our managers, all the personas that are out there, what tool is the right tool for the different persona? And so they're responsible for that front end visualization as well. And of course, we'll get to the insights part and building out that longer term, getting to deep analytics. We work really closely with, we have a deep analytics overall team at Fortive that does more of the data science. And so how do we work with them? Where do they play versus where do we play? And so they'll work closely with our overall enterprise analytics team as well.
That's fantastic. I want to echo what you said about really being thoughtful about that choice, because it did jump out around like data governance and analytics. And that data governance is in there first. It also breaks my Boolean as I'm looking for things for my jobs page. So I had to go find that one. But I think it's a really thoughtful approach, because that's the reality of a lot of these jobs. And people bomb in thinking they can do data science out of the gate, or they try to get someone to do data science out of the gate. And it's like, you guys haven't done any cleanup of your house. Like, how are you expecting this person to be successful here? And I think I'm sure that there's a number of people kind of listening to this that are like, I wish I could work for a Linda. Just that space you have to create the success for that person in that role, the thoughtfulness you're bringing in is rare to find in the space. And so for anyone listening that's thinking about starting a people analytics team, this is definitely the way to do it, is set them up for success, go after the data governance, go after the tech first, build from there. And so I think whoever finds this role is going to be very lucky.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Richard. It's I think that part of it is just from seeing it a couple of times, right? Like you said, that when we're getting these questions from senior leaders and they're asking for all these deep data insights, and it's like, our data, who's managing our data? Do we even know what our calculation, our definitions are for some of these data fields and restrictions, right? And so, who's able to access, and not just access, change some of these data fields and understanding of which data fields to use. And so I think it's part of it is from lessons learned and burns, I'd
Wisdom.
say. And
Wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And as we're thinking about like how someone could be successful, I think you laid out some really nice places around like the things they're doing, the things they're up to. When you think about Fortive, are there things that would set somebody up for success at Fortive in general, almost separate from the day-to-day tasks, those sort of like cultural things or the ideas that resonate, or yeah, we would just love to hear you kind of talk about what would make sense to have someone to really thrive at Fortive.
Yeah, I mean, coming from me who just recently joined, in my mind, I still really feel new, but
Yeah.
some of the unique things that I think Fortive does is we really believe in what we call immersion. Other places call it onboarding, but our immersion is really that you don't touch work for a while. Usually at an executive level, it's 8 weeks that you actually learn, shadow different people, and are just really absorbing the information. And so there is this expectation that when you joined for your first 2 months, that you're learning, that you actually don't actually have a responsibility to provide an output yet in that period of time. And I think that's just great, since a lot of times you're hitting the ground running. Transparently for me, I didn't get the full 2 months, but it's also built and then it's extended. So I still have time in that. My period of time it's an extended period of time because I had to help build a team. They were missing a leader. And so there was a couple things I had to take on immediately, but I really do think that this immersion period and the expectation from everyone around is like, okay, you're still in immersion. We'll give you space to learn on them. I would say second is that I really find that everyone at Fortive wants you to do well. I find that everyone wants to help, and is available to help. And so whether to me, it was, hey, I was always available to the CIO. The CIO made time for me at any time I wanted. The CFO, all of the presidents, at any time I can reach out and have a conversation with them and to learn. And so everyone's just very willing across the organization to help and you learn. I would say the third thing is that we really do believe in standard work, which is documentation. And so although we don't have a lot, we really, in this space yet, because it's so new, everyone really values it. And so the work to get things documented, the work to get things standardized is very appreciated and identified for it. I would say last, because I know that this is probably a long answer, is that there is information out there. We've been doing, some of the analytics, and there's multiple people who are doing this daily, who is open to having a conversation and saying, this is what I'm doing. This is some of the challenges I'm running into. How can you help? And how can I do better? And so I just felt that this very warm, welcoming family, I would say, that I came into, and that this role would come into.
That's great to hear. I really like the labeling of immersion too, because like everybody goes through onboarding, but like onboarding is something that like is very optional a lot of places.
Yeah.
It's a really, really calling it something, making it almost like a little ritual for the company. That sounds like that's working out well.
Yeah, I love it. I just hired someone, a new leader, and there's this immersion template. There's courses that you have to take. There's people that you have to meet with. There's a journal that you are updating. And as part of your one-on-one with your manager, how is your immersion going? Like, you're accountable to giving updates to how your learning of Fortive is going. And so it really helps, I would say, both sides, the manager and the employee, in regards of how this process is working.
It's a very cool data set too.
Yeah.
Just putting the analytics on, like, that's a rare qualitative data set to have access to. But no, so as you're thinking about like what's ahead of you at Fortive and some of the projects or some of the things that get you excited about working there and things that you would want to communicate to someone that's like, hey, come on board because we're going places, we're doing something big. Could you talk a little bit about what's exciting ahead?
Yeah, I would say that really this is such a great time to join Fortive, on outside of HR and inside HR. Inside HR, we're going through this major, what we call transformation. I know many companies call it HR transformation, but what it means here is that we're changing all of how HR works, our processes, which means we are directly changing how we support employees and making this a better experience for them. So we're changing process, we're changing their technologies that they're working with, constantly looking at new technologies that are out there and how does it fit into our organization. And we were really looking at how do we build capabilities, build new skills. I know there's lots of fear around what is AI taking away, and what work is automation taking away. And we have a fundamental belief that we can help build capabilities, we can build more skills. And so there's a strong talent focus here that we want to help you grow at Fortive and provide different skills, provide different opportunities, mentorship, work. And at any time, like for me, as an example, in a month, August 14th, I'm going to what we call a Kaizen, where I'm looking at completely new business I haven't been part of. And they're looking at multiple processes and bringing in a cross-functional team to just give ideas on how we can improve the process. And so that unique opportunity, and really they have a listing constantly. We have a listing of all of our what we call Kaizens. And you can just reach out and say, can I attend one? And that's what I did. And they said, sure, come along. And so it was, cool. Yeah. So I think that's exciting here that we're constantly looking at, and in our product line, I think like healthcare is changing so much. All of our software is changing so much. And so lots of opportunities.
That's fantastic. Maybe a quick note for those in the chat. First off, thank you all for being with us and sticking with us here. If you could start thinking about some questions. I've got a couple more here, but I want to make sure we can get to kind of Q&A near the end. So if you've got some questions already, if things are kind of bubbling around your head that you'd like to ask Linda, you can start putting those in the chat. And we'll be coming to those after I go through a couple more here. But I always like to give people a heads up so we don't spring a surprise on them by the end. Maybe just to pivot a little bit here, Linda, as you're thinking about the job seekers that are out there and people that are looking in the people analytics market, do you have any advice you'd like to pass on to people that are looking for roles? Yeah, maybe even more generally than specific to Fortive. You can definitely go specific to Fortive too, but would love to just kind of hear what you'd like to pass on to folk.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for job seekers in general, I interview a lot. I've been hiring teams for quite a while now, and I think that what I love hearing is that what really makes you unique. And so in this space, as an example, when I meet with different people, it's like, yeah, well, I like data, I like analytics. I think this is a lot of people like that. So what is your unique proposition for this? Like, what's different about you? What is your, and I would say for me, well, I've had cross-functional things. I really like operational data. I really like people, how to execute it. I really like financial data. Like I am a business at heart. I need to understand how we make money, how we lose money. And like, that's what makes me unique. That it's not just the people data side. I'm not a typical HR person. I'm unique because I really understand the business rhythm. So I can project on, hey, in a year's time, it doesn't look well. So what is that going to happen on the people side? What does that happen to our HR investment? Right? What happens to our training and development investment when our revenues are projected to go down? So I constantly listen to our quarterly calls, our annual calls, and that's what makes me unique. You won't meet, many people who will constantly listen from that aspect. And that doesn't have to be your unique proposition, but what is your unique? Is it, I remember meeting someone and they said they really like breweries. And I was like, I don't know how this ties into this interview. Like, I don't know exactly, right? But I thought, then they started talking about how they understand the supply chain of how, and the products that go into making it. And I was like, oh, I see where you're going now. Your unique things is you can understand down to the material level. And that's where you're going, is that your way of working is that. So I think that part, how you position yourself being unique is really critical, whether it's on your LinkedIn, whether it's in your, and I would say, second piece is, what is your elevator pitch? I think that is incredibly important. And you should work like that every interaction is an elevator pitch. And when I was earlier in my career, I thought, oh gosh, it just feels like I'm so much like selling. Like I'm selling and I'm not trying to sell. I'm just trying to be me. And I would give you guidance in that your elevator pitch is really just a summary of who you are. That's not selling. It's just educating people on who you are so they can leverage you and they can understand where to fit you in their picture. And so it really isn't selling, but this elevator pitch is just so critical because you'll meet people randomly, whether it's here, whether it's in, Richard said, a happy hour, different conferences, reaching out. And so I think it's just really important. And that elevator, you just get better at it. You need to practice this summary of yourself is really critical on how you talk to when you're looking for a different role there. And it helps you understand what you want. I think that's really, sometimes I meet with people and they're like, well, I just want a job. It's like, okay, so what kind of job? Like, I have many jobs. So like, where do I fit you in? So I think it's really, I'd say third, aside from your elevator pitch, is what are you really interested in? And it ties back to you being unique, but people always want to make sure that you're happy in your role, at least for me anyways. And so I think it's really critical to know what type of work you like and that you want to get into.
It's really good advice to kind of talk about what makes you unique. It's also like there's a bit of an era shift there where like the world used to be a little different, where it was like, you've got to talk about how you fit in and you've got to make yourself fit in. Whereas today it is a little bit more of this, like, hey, what is your puzzle piece? And let me think about that. And I was talking to someone recently how like we're all born with these like spiky interests and personalities. And then over time, we try to smooth them out to become like normal. And the reality is like, you've got to have those spiky things about you, those oddities that like, hey, that's you. And let's use those and let's talk about those. And let's see how we can make that part of the overall puzzle here. So I really like hearing that. It's that's something I'm going to chew on a little bit, because I think that's a really new era thing though, to be unique in an interview. And that's great advice for somebody that's looking in the market today.
Yeah. I like that spiky analogy, Richard.
Yeah. So let's see. Do we have no questions in the chat yet? So I'll keep rolling with a couple of mine here. As you're thinking about gaining buy-in, it's an interesting thing to kind of make the pitch for analytics and to think about how you create the space for that, and kind of almost like that, like before you even start doing analytics, you've got to actually get people aware of it and up to speed on it and thinking about like, why do we even need this thing? Do you have any advice for teams that are looking to kind of pitch or think about creating space for people analytics within their own organizations? And whether that's from experience or just musings on it too, that's perfectly fine.
It's interesting. I think that it's shifted so much in the last few years that people are actually pulling for people analytics now rather than it's a push. It used to be a push that, hey, like here's more why we're so important. But I think in regards of kind of getting business buy-in is really, can we help make this tangible and help make business decision? And kind of tying back to, what does this mean for me? You have a lot of data, but what do I do with it? So help me make a decision with it, and what decision is important to me. So I think this is really part of the analytics team and understanding the business, like what's important to them. How do you tie it back to help them? Because at the end of the day, people want help. That's what we're here for, is we're trying to help each other. So how do you help us make a decision and make impact on, or is this a nice to have? And I think kind of going in with understanding, how does this help me and why now? Why is it critical now to get the investment, whether it's time? So it's not just dollars for a new system, but you need time for change management, for rolling out things. So why do you need this now versus 6 months from now? Because everyone is always under the water. And so for you to try to get their time now, you have to, and in my mind, it's a business case, light conversation on why now, and what does it help me with, I think really helps on it. I would say the other piece is that at times what I've seen for analytics is that sometimes we get really granular and with a lot of data, and we're not understanding the full picture of it. And not even understanding, but it's too much. I share with people that over time, you get 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And so what are you trying to tell me in 5 minutes? I think about my manager who has close to 10 reports. So constantly she has 10 major areas that she has on her mind and more, I'm sure. And so in my 10 minutes, what is the priority for her at this point for me to share out with her? So I think really looking at it from their lens will help you get the case for analytics.
Yeah. Excuse me. I really like what you said about why now versus 6 months from now, because that is the big thing. I think everyone's like, yeah, we want people analytics eventually, or we need it. Yeah, like it's almost this, like it's hard to argue with the need for it anymore, but it's a matter of the prioritization of it now. And it's, why is this so important right now, and sometimes it isn't so important right now. Sometimes there are other things that are more important, and that's also just the nature of, like, we've all got our blinders on, that like our world is the most important, which can happen. But I think that idea of like, how do you think in a prioritization mindset and helping someone else prioritize the space and understand the need for the prioritization, that's a critical part about getting buy-in for anything within a company.
Yeah, I forgot to mention a key thing. I think what people really also want to see is show me wins, show me tactically how it helps me now, and then long term, right? So they want to understand the long term vision, where you want to get to, but along the way, can you help us so it's not all or nothing? So I think around, I mentioned around data governance. So I want to get to insights, but let me build in some of these foundational pieces. Along the way, I'll give you key insights. It might not be everything, but there are key ones that we have to hit on. So let me give you that, while I also build this data governance model, while I share and make sure that we have a strong foundation to get there. But I think that these wins along the way is really important for people to tangibly see that there's value, and we can share out, and that's how you get buy-in. Like, people want to understand, sometimes whether it's in new systems or other, it's theoretical at times, right? Like, we're doing process like on a map or on a Visio or on a Word document. It's like, well, I don't see it yet. But until you start showing me how you can really change it, it's a bit of a vicious cycle, right? That I can't show you until I get the investment, and then I don't have the investment until I show you. And so how to break this and show wins. And so rather than waiting for a big fancy tool, as an example for analytics, how do you show them you can do something with Excel, right? At the end of the day, you can. So do something with Excel, do something with your current tools, and show the value of it. And so, instead of taking probably 50 hours that you did with Excel, probably in one model, you can take seconds. I'm sure she would tell me. So, but right, you get to the same outcome.
Yeah, no, it's true. And there's a lot of teams that balance that, and trying to figure that out is critical. Yeah. So I'll have one more question for you, because we've got a couple in the Q&A, and I want to make sure we get to as many Q&A as we can. Thinking about what's ahead for the field. So considering your open role, you've actually baked in some things that are ahead for the field around kind of governance and some of the process pieces. But could you talk about what do you think is coming for this people analytics based? And this can be crystal ball stuff, doesn't have to be super grounded. We'd just love to hear a little bit about what you think's up ahead for us.
Yeah, I would say, of course, generative AI is going to be drastically changing the way we work and the speed to how we get to what we do. So I think that I'm interested in seeing how are we, when I talk to analytics people, on how are they keeping up with different tools, and are they playing around with it? Are they, seeing how it can help, but also the risk that it also provides as well. And so I think just the new technologies and new companies also that's constantly getting into it now. Now it's open source. And so I have tons of companies saying I have the new best system. And so how do you understand what they're doing, learn what they're doing, and apply it as well? So this new era I find really exciting to get into. I also think that it changes the skill set of what's needed for the team. So, the deep technical pieces, do we buy or do we build? What's faster? I think people a lot of times like to build, but it's also changing as well. And how do we get people comfortable with saying, well, how do we leverage these other tools, and what skill set do you need now? I think that the skill set of, because I when I talk to people and they're fearful of AI and fearful of some of the technology, it's like, well, AI doesn't make the decision for you, right? It doesn't innovate. It doesn't have curiosity. That's what you have. And so your skill set of some of these building visualization, we still need your skill, but you understand the data more. Can you help me ask questions more? And Crystal, I would say that in general, we see this move in regards of everyone's trying to be more, this analytical skill set is not just on an analytics team. It's broader. It's all of HR. HR is expected to know and understand analytics more. And so part of our role is to help educate and train these other HR to be more analytical. I also think that this is key because sometimes they ask us questions and it's like, that's not useful. I don't know why you're asking me that, right? And so how do we educate them so they help us as well? But I think that this is really key, that all of us are being more analytical and asking the right questions is different and more strategic. I think that this team is going to be less operational and much more of a strategic arm and really helping with that. And that skill set of being that partner. Now that we have more tools to help us now, right? Where, I think we used to spend hundreds of hours on some of these simple things that now, like literally I can Google and it can create stuff for me. Not Google, but online, it can create things for me in minutes now, rather than spending hours and hours on this that we can get into. So that would be my guess in regards of our skill sets changing, our own team skill set, but also across the company is changing.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm just missing on like all of the current like big weird changes that are coming to HR hit your team, which is really exciting. It's an exciting time to be in that team you're in. That's sort of like the ops is just getting totally reshaped by the generative stuff, all the different things that are going on with enablement, with kind of the AI and analytics, and then having the kind of process piece, like be able to kind of look across that. You're in a really cool spot to see the future of HR.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. And I know you're really helping on your side as well and seeing across. So I'm sure you'll see many companies and we'll still stay in conversation on what you're learning.
Always. So that's it for the recording part of this. So Derek, if you wouldn't mind stop the recording, we'll switch over to Q&A. And just a quick thank you to Linda too, before the recording cuts out, for participating in all the questions we've asked so far.